Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
The next night, Chen Ming drove the Stardust to the target star system. This is the local military base of the star zone called Meteor 1. There are two well-known laboratories in this star system, one of which is the Electronic Engineering Laboratory, which is more authoritative in electronic data. This laboratory is also the laboratory that proposed the basic theory of analog equipment. Although the subsequent research was not completed independently by this laboratory, the basic theory alone is obviously valuable enough. The other laboratory is a comprehensive large laboratory, which was funded and built by the Star Region government and the army to which the Meteor Star Zone belongs, and covers a wide range of research. Naturally, it also includes the things that Chen Ming is studying. The Electronic Engineering Laboratory can try to recover the damaged data in the simulation, and this comprehensive laboratory can help determine the value of the damaged research data. Of course, the simulated data has long been sent to the Electronic Engineering Laboratory, but the data has not been restored yet. So Chen Ming's main purpose this time is this comprehensive large laboratory to determine the value of the experimental data. When Chen Ming entered this star system, at first glance, he saw the red volcanic planet that looked similar to the 14th Legion's headquarters. Just when he thought he was going to the volcanic planet to see the ecological domes that looked like the 14th Legion's headquarters, Bai Quan suddenly made Chen Ming's spaceship turn a corner and headed to another habitable planet in the galaxy. Although there is a military station in this galaxy, it does not block civilians from entering. Because in this galaxy, there is an open scientific research colony on the habitable planet that Chen Ming is about to arrive at. A large number of research institutes are gathered here, and the two laboratories that Chen Ming is going to are in this colony. Although the Stardust class is a combat cruiser, it has smoothly bypassed the transit space station in orbit and began to land on the surface of the planet with Bai Quan's advance arrangements. While still in the air, Chen Ming could see the scene of high-rise buildings and various buildings with the characteristics of scientific researchers interlaced in the city. As the altitude decreased, more details of the city and the colony appeared in front of him. For example, the various shops on the ground floor of the scientific research building, the commercial buildings that are integrated with the city, and the pedestrians coming and going. Although this is a scientific research colony, it has supporting infrastructure and so on. The whole city is still full of vitality, without the overly cold atmosphere in the laboratory. Chen Ming still likes this kind of urban environment that combines different advantages. However, as the altitude of the spacecraft continues to decrease, Chen Ming can no longer see more details in the city. Because the Stardust class landed on a piece of land belonging to the Star Zone military outside the city. There is a military base near the parking point. After the Stardust class landed, a special person soon came to guide and took Chen Ming and Bai Quan to the inside of the military base. After walking through a long series of winding routes, they arrived at a conference room. When the guide pushed open the door of the conference room in front, Chen Ming noticed that there were already people sitting on one side of the conference table in the conference room, a total of 6 people, one of whom was Lu Wei. And the rank hanging on Lu Wei's chest has indeed been reduced from Major General to Colonel. Because of this, Lu Wei is actually not qualified to meet Bai Quan alone now. Therefore, there is another general accompanying him, sitting next to Lu Wei, with the rank of Major General on his chest. Lu Wei looks to be in his 40s or 50s, and he is at least 2 generations older than Lu Wei. 60 or 70 years old. Looks like he is half buried in the ground. The average life expectancy of humans now seems to be 140 years old, which is indeed half buried in the ground. Chen Ming has actually seen this person before, at a small-scale military meeting he attended with Bai Quan before. I didn't expect to meet him again in such a place and under such a background. He should be one of the senior officials of Lu Wei's faction. Speaking of which, Lu Wei should also be considered a senior official, right? After all, he was a major general before, and he personally went down to this point in the end. I don't know if this person will have the same ending in the future. Chen Ming sat opposite them. His eyes swept over the people in front of him. They all lowered their heads, and I don't know what they were thinking. Bai Quan didn't rush to sit down. Instead, he greeted the Major General opposite him, calling him Major General Song. After shaking hands with him, he sat next to Chen Ming. After all three people on Chen Ming's side sat down, Major General Song coughed and said to Bai Quan, "We have contacted the laboratory here. They can help to determine the damage based on the experimental data and keep the experimental data confidential. We are waiting for your data. Have you brought your data?" Bai Quan looked at Chen Ming, and Chen Ming picked up the briefcase he brought with him, opened it, took out a chip that stored a large amount of experimental data and placed it on the table. Chen Ming thought about what Bai Quan had just said to him, and slowly pushed the chip towards Lu Wei and others sitting opposite. The chip slid on the table, but it had only slid a few dozen centimeters when Bai Quan next to him suddenly reached out and pressed the chip. While others were surprised, Major General Song, who had originally looked good, gradually became worse. Bai Quan knocked on the table to draw everyone's attention to him. "I think you all know what happened 2 days ago. Before the leak is resolved, I will not agree to conduct verification, including verification of Chen Ming's research data and verification of whether Chen Ming has the ability to control the colony." Major General Song also knocked on the table lightly to draw everyone's attention to himself and said, "These are 2 different things." Bai Quan immediately lowered his face and said, "2 different things? Not necessarily. Only Chen Ming and I know our trajectory, but you know the situation in your place. How many people know about this matter? You should know which side the person who leaked the news is from. Previously, we relaxed the control of Jing and allowed them to sneak in. You all know who is in the company that we have a cooperative relationship with. Let Jing go in the front, reveal the location to Jing later, and target Chen Ming every time. These are 2 different things? I now have reason to suspect that I will encounter the same thing when I arrive at the colony. I am afraid it will become 3 different things in your mouth by then." Major General Song obviously wanted to speak, but Bai Quan interrupted without giving him face. "The supervision department has already gone, and the matter will soon have a result. Anyway, the research results were taken when we came out. There is no equipment here and no new content will be added. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2 days. I hope I can see you again after the results come out in 2 days." The disposable cup in Major General Song's hand was slightly deformed. He could see that Bai Quan had prepared for things to develop in this direction from the beginning, and it was useless to say anything more to Bai Quan. He turned his head slightly to look at Chen Ming, but Chen Ming was leaning back in his chair and letting Bai Quan take full responsibility. It seems that there is nothing to say to Chen Ming. The 2 of them had obviously discussed it in advance. Major General Song simply said, "Okay, that's it, goodbye." After that, he stood up and prepared to leave the conference room with others. But just as he left his seat and turned around, someone suddenly pushed open the door of the conference room and walked in. It was also someone Chen Ming had seen before, the psychic researcher that Lu Wei had found in the simulation before. He first looked at Chen Ming in the conference room, and then at the others. Seeing that the atmosphere in the conference room was tense and Major General Song looked like he was about to leave, he asked, "Am I here at the wrong time?" Major General Song was quite respectful to the psychic researcher who came over and did not leave directly. Instead, he controlled his expression and greeted him, then asked, "Researcher Higu, why are you here? Isn't the headquarters busy?" Higu nodded to him and said, "I'm on a business trip occasionally. Are you not going to chat? I see you just went in for a while." Major General Song looked back at Bai Quan, then turned back and said, "Bai Quan has no plans to continue the test because of the incident 2 days ago. We didn't reach a consensus, so we can only wait for the investigation to be completed before continuing this matter." "Oh," Higu said with a clear look, "I have heard about this recent incident. I respect your ideas anyway, but as for me, I don't have the temper to talk about other things with others when someone is in trouble. You can do whatever you want." Higu's words obviously favored Chen Ming. Major General Song's expression turned cold again, and he left the meeting room with others. After the others left, Higu continued to look at Chen Ming. And while he was observing Chen Ming was also observing him. Higu's eyes no longer had the uncertainty he had when he was simulating. Even though Chen Ming had not verified his psychic power, he seemed to really believe that Chen Ming had such power today. Chen Ming felt that the video released 2 days ago was the reason why he had such a change of heart. The 2 looked at each other for a while, and Higu suddenly said to Chen Ming, "Mr. Chen Ming, can we chat sometime?" What to talk about? About your psychic power. Chen Ming thought about it, but couldn't figure out what Higu wanted to do, so he refused. Forget it. I prefer to explore psychic power by myself. That's a pity. Higu didn't force it, but just said, then notify me when you conduct the colony ability test later. I really want to see it with my own eyes. No problem. Before Chen Ming opened his mouth, Bai Quan answered for Chen Ming, and Chen Ming didn't move, acquiescing to Bai Quan's answer. Higu nodded and turned to leave the meeting room. The meeting room was empty, and Chen Ming and Bai Quan's secretary would naturally not stay any longer. After leaving the conference room, he walked towards the Stardust level. On the way, Bai Quan explained to Chen Ming the reason why he had just agreed to Higu's request. Higu is a veteran psychic in the Psychic Research Institute of our 14th Corps. He is a good person. At least when I have something to do with him, he is the one who connects with me. He is easy to talk to. It won't hurt to get in touch with him. And I feel that he may want to invite you to the Psychic Research Institute just now. Of course, it depends on you. Just follow the rules of the association. Chen Ming asked, I have heard of the Psychic Research Institute several times, but what exactly does it do? The Psychic Research Institute must mainly study things related to psionic energy. Medicines used by psychers, psionic weapons, and psychers themselves are all subjects of research. However, Higu's research direction is quite special. It seems to be the civilian application of psychic technology, but I don't understand this stuff. When Bai Quan heard this, he looked Chen Ming up and down and said, Why don't you understand? Isn't it the core of purgatory? I went to him once just before to find a suitable user of the purgatory core. At that time, he seemed to be more interested in the basic effects of the purgatory core, that is, the purgatory core controller you created for ordinary people to use. I feel like he came to see you this time for this reason. Chen Ming was a little surprised when he heard this. The scene in the previous simulation when Higu asked him those questions flashed through his mind. This means that he was actually interested in me before, right? But in the simulation, I didn't see it at the time. He was found by Lu Wei before because you didn't recognize the formula he wrote for measuring the strength of psychers, so he came here just to ask you a few questions based on that formula. You told me your reasons, but he didn't say anything. Why don't you just sit there and watch the show? The simulated situation has nothing to do with him. And he is not the person in charge of verifying psychic technology at the Psionics Research Institute. Someone else is doing this job. He is not the one in charge of reviewing your purgatory core technology. He probably didn't know about you before. He only found out about it later when I couldn't find a suitable person to test the purgatory core anywhere and went to him for help. But the simulation would have been over by then. Bai Quan explained to Chen Ming, then suddenly turned his words 180 degrees and said, Of course, we don't rule out the possibility that he knew you in advance. Question mark. Bai Quan immediately explained, But you have to think about it. Even if he understands your skills, he definitely doesn't know the upper limit of your psychic abilities. The speed of your progress is really so fast that I can't help but doubt it. If I hadn't known you for a long time, I wouldn't have believed that anyone could do what you did. I just thought you were complimenting me. Chen Ming accepted Bai Quan's words, which were probably a compliment to his psychic abilities, and said, In that case, it shouldn't be a problem to contact him, but that will happen later. It just so happened that he still had the idea of trading the psionic power armor. This Psionic Research Institute must be related to the website where psyker contribution points are exchanged. Maybe he can learn some additional information through Higu. If there is still a chance to meet, you can try to chat. If not, forget it. Ended the topic of Higu. Chen Ming also reached the Stardust level. But just as he was preparing to finish dinner, he suddenly realized something and immediately turned to Bai Quan and said, We met with people today, and Yin and Yang weirded them out, and the rest seems to be nothing. Not done. So what are we going to do next? We really didn't do anything, but we didn't need to do anything. Now that we have led the supervisory department to an end, this matter must have a result, and it will definitely be a result that is beneficial to us. We just have to wait. Chen Ming still felt a little weird and asked, Does it really not matter if you don't do anything? Bai Quan said matter-of-factly, It certainly doesn't matter. We have done what we need to do before. What else do we need to do now? Why do you always think that you must do something yourself? As long as we start these things, someone will do the rest. Because it's a little different from what I'm used to. Chen Ming said awkwardly, I sometimes give out some tasks, but I usually explain all the tasks clearly, and the purpose is clear. At least there will be no problems in the general direction. Now, I just do things by myself and let other people decide what to do. This makes me a little uncomfortable. It gives me the feeling that someone didn't do a good job. What should I do? Bai Quan still said in the same manner. If you don't do it well, then let people change it. If it is the kind of thing where if there is a problem in one link, the whole problem will go wrong and there is no way to change it, then you should not go in this direction from the beginning. The normal arrangement is just to prepare a backup plan and just look at the rest. If someone makes a mistake and can't correct it and then gets fired, there are always many capable people keeping an eye on those positions. Chen Ming felt that what Bai Quan said was indeed correct, but he was still a little worried about a situation happening. Look at Lu Wei and the others. Is it because one person did not do a good job that led to the psychics from Zhuojia to assassinate us? Originally, if they were just a small fleet, they would not be investigated. Bai Quan had nothing to refute the examples given by Chen Ming and admitted, what you mentioned is indeed a problem, but this kind of thing is always inevitable. Even Yu Hui and the machine tribe cannot make mistakes. At least take good care of those close to you and keep these people from causing problems. That way, if something happens, you can just solve the problem itself and not get involved. Sooner or later, you will encounter this kind of situation in the future. You can't do everything yourself, so you have to do the same in the future. Chen Ming frowned and thought for a while, then said, I may need to get used to it. It's okay. Anyway, we should have nothing to do in the next 2 days. You can adapt slowly. Bai Quan suddenly patted Chen Ming's shoulder, and he and Chen Ming walked separately to different rooms in the corridor of the spaceship. Chen Ming waved to Bai Quan and returned to his room thinking about what Bai Quan said. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Chen Ming was lying on the sofa where he usually had classes as usual, reading the daily report sent by Bai Quan. He is paying attention to the report on the progress of the investigation of this incident every day. The contents of the daily reports are also developing in the direction that Bai Quan guessed. Lu Wei's faction has indeed been cooperating with the regulatory authorities in their investigations. Even though this matter really involved the highest level of the opposing faction, a lieutenant general of the same level as Bai Quan, they still cooperated with the regulatory authorities to complete the investigation. The final result of the investigation was that the lieutenant general's deputy secretly and deliberately leaked information about the whereabouts of Chen Ming and Bai Quan. Of course, the deputy was immediately restrained. Others did not go to jail along with him. Instead, there are other penalties, which are not listed in detail. However, after Chen Ming got the daily report, Bai Quan handed Chen Ming a result that was not on the daily report. The content was exactly what was not recorded in the daily report, the final punishment of those other people involved in the Lu Wei faction. Chen Ming ignored the others and immediately found the most senior lieutenant general of the Lu Wei faction. Although he was not the mastermind of this incident, he failed to restrain his subordinates and ensure the cleanliness of the team, and he also needs to bear certain joint and several liability. The final penalty was a solemn public apology and self-examination to Bai Quan and Chen Ming within the 14th Army Corps. And like all other principals, he was demoted half a level. In addition, there are some innocuous punishments such as emptying subsidies and forfeiture of wages, which seem very light. However, Chen Ming did not draw a conclusion. He pointed to the line on the penalty and asked Bai Quan, is there still half a level of this military rank? This is a nominal half level. To put it bluntly, it is similar to a suspended sentence. As long as there are no problems in the next period of time, the position can be restored. But once there is a problem during this period, all the problems will be counted together. They will not continue to cause trouble to us, at least for a certain period of time. Chen Ming immediately felt the seriousness of this half-level reduction and said, does it mean that if you make mistakes during this period, you will be taken down? Then I feel that they are useless. Bai Quan said, it is indeed useless, so I am actually a little surprised that they really did this. But this can be regarded as the rapid retreat. Otherwise, if anyone dares to continue to advance a little bit, It will not be a half-level reduction to save them some face. I already felt it when I arrived here 2 days ago. Their attitude was not quite right. Chen Ming also immediately recalled it. At that time, Major Song's attitude toward Bai Quan seemed to be quite normal. He didn't say there was any tit-for-tat feeling. It really didn't seem like he wanted to continue to conflict with Bai Quan. He was just unhappy about being humiliated. The other people also lowered their heads at that time, as if they didn't want to talk at all. At that time, Chen Ming thought it was because the inspection by the supervisory department made them all worry about their own problems. Unexpectedly, they should have understood by then that they had no future in the political field. Is this the end? It's just that they are over, not everyone. There is not only one faction in the Legion that is targeting me, but Lu Wei and the others danced the most happily. Chen Ming put down the terminal in his hand, looked at Bai Quan and said, I still feel it's a bit unreal. They made so many moves before, but it was just this one small move, and then it was gone. Because this involves the life of a general, things will naturally develop in this direction, just like last time. Think about the 2 lieutenant generals in the war zone. They are deeply involved with Jing, and they can't even get off the stage safely. Bai Quan suddenly said with some emotion, we are all within a set of established rules now. Once many things cross the line, we can only withdraw. As long as we don't continue to seek death, it is always okay to step down steadily. For us, in many cases, we don't have to drag down or kill the opponent before the game ends. If we find an opportunity to force the opponent to be like this, the result will be the same. There is more than just fighting and killing within the Legion. I only understood this truth not long ago. The matter is completely over, and they can only barely maintain their last dignity. Chen Ming stared at the final penalty on the terminal on the table for a while, and also said with some emotion, what a pity. What are you regretting? Do you want to see a man across the street with his family ruined and his wife scattered in the cold in front of the door? Absolutely. Chen Ming said, I hope that all those who have enmity with me will die ugly. But as he spoke, he suddenly thought of Cheng Xinghe and immediately added, at least before reconciliation. Anyway, I can't accept this situation now, to be honest. Although they have no follow-up in the political arena, they should be able to spend their later years safely, right? Bai Quan had nothing to say about this, because this is the rule, and this rule is also our guarantee in case we lose power in the future. Chen Ming shook his head and said nothing. Bai Quan could see that Chen Ming was a little unhappy, but as he just said, this is the rule. Anyway, the 2 incidents in Jing are settled. But our business is not over yet. There are still 3 things to do. Estimate the value of your research results, verify your ability to control the colony, and add insult to injury. Chen Ming was slightly more alert after hearing the last few words Bai Quan said, and asked, adding insult to injury? Yes. We can't let people retreat so easily, right? If they want to retreat, then we must bite off a large piece of meat before they retreat. Now they will get into trouble whenever they commit a crime, which is just the opportunity for us to do something, and even if we don't do it, most of their resources will be divided up by others. Then I must intervene. Bai Quan's words aroused Chen Ming's interest. So what should we do specifically? Just grab their share of the resources originally in the Legion. What resources? The command of the fleet, the annual military expenditure, whether the technology developed by some research institutes can be obtained in the first place, and their people. Chen Ming asked back, do you want all the people? Yes, because people are also resources. And the fleet command, military expenditure, and technology one just mentioned are all related to people. If we don't grab the people, how can these resources come to me? Everyone who has the ability will not die in the sea with the body that has been sinking. The potential, I have the confidence to control it, and it can also come over. It's like Lu Wei. He is actually in his ability. He is a major general in his 40s, but you should be unhappy, so even if you want to dig. But others must find a way. Chen Ming considered Bai Quan's words. That's okay. This can already be regarded as the dispute between the 2 factions of Bai Quan and Lu Wei. He will not have compassion in the factional disputes with him who has a direct face-to-face conflict. Chen Ming definitely supports Bai Quan to completely plunder all the resources and even people of the other side. This way, they will not have the opportunity to make a comeback. Chen Ming suddenly sat up from the sofa, stretched his body after reading the report for a long time, and said with a stiff body, "I thought there was still a long battle to fight, but I didn't expect that it would end because of an assassination from the left-handed psychic." Bai Quan also stood up from the sofa and prepared to start teaching Chen Ming every day. But at this time, he said to Chen Ming again, "This is also a reminder, don't think about taking action against others. I know, I have seen the consequences of doing this twice, so I won't take action against others." But Chen Ming didn't say another thing, that is, whether other people take action or not is none of his business. If someone really makes him angry, he has a way to kill people without being discovered. Bai Quan also felt that Chen Ming's words were implicit, but since Chen Ming had already said that he would not take action, he had nothing to explain. However, Chen Ming suddenly asked another question at this time. "When will we meet with Lu Wei and others next time? This matter has come to an end. They won't have no time to come and finish the rest with us, right?" "That's not the case." Bai Quan immediately denied Chen Ming's guess, and after roughly calculating, he said, "It should be tomorrow. What they need to do now is to save some resources that can be used after they step down as soon as possible. Other things don't matter. One day is enough for such a small matter." "Oh, okay." One day passed in a blink of an eye. Chen Ming came to the meeting room where they met last time again. Like last time, Lu Wei and others sat in the meeting room earlier than them. Their status is not much different from before. It's just that they were anxiously waiting for the trial before, but now they have received the court verdict. Chen Ming still has a cold face and no expression as before. After giving out the storage chip, he handed over all the rest to Bai Quan to deal with. Bai Quan didn't say much this time. Anyway, the matter was over, and there was no possibility of reversal, so he just acted kindly. He did not make things difficult for others, and directly handed the chip to Major General Song. "Take a look. These are the things that we have researched in the 17 days before we set off." Chen Ming subconsciously glanced at the chip. In these 17 days, he was able to research quite a few things. Chen Ming could only say that he was rich if he did not make Lu Wei lose everything. You should know that this chip also includes some research data on the synchrotron core. And the complete research content of the synchrotron core has long been sent to where it should go by Bai Quan. With the last purgatory core hormone or foundation, the report Chen Ming sent this time has been placed in the highest priority queue waiting for review, and a reply will be given soon. According to Chen Ming's estimation, the synchrotron core and the purgatory core are of the same level, and there is a high probability that it can also be mixed with first-class merit. Lu Wei's delay in first-class merit is not a small trouble, and the compensation will definitely not be small. Major General Song inserted the chip into the terminal. When Lu Wei, who was standing next to him, saw the number of files displayed on the terminal, his hands subconsciously trembled. Chen Ming immediately noticed this and suddenly said, "You won't default on your debt, will you?" Lu Wei's face became even uglier than before, but he still squeezed out two words, "No." "Do you have money to pay?" "Instructor Chen, if he doesn't have money, we will try our best to get compensation for you." Chen Ming was a little stunned when he heard Major General Song address him. He almost forgot that he was a temporary tactical instructor hired by the 14th Corps. Major General Song's sincere attitude and the stunned moment because of the address made Chen Ming lose interest in continuing to be aggressive. He leaned back on the chair and closed his eyes to rest. Of course, he said he closed his eyes to rest, but in fact Chen Ming was paying attention to the situation on the main body. Because the third temporary base is about to be found. It has been almost a month since he ran to the 14th Corps today, and the exploration of the galaxy around the second temporary base by Hui Huang is also nearing its end. Although the investigation around the first temporary base took about 2 months to complete. But after all, the whole thing was started from scratch, and there was no experience at all. After the first experience, the efficiency of this investigation was obviously higher. And Chen Ming believed that starting from the third base, the efficiency would be even higher. Because the supreme point that Chen Ming had borrowed from Xiao Yang and had been using was almost due to be returned. With 2 supreme points, more materials, more experience, and more support, it is definitely not a problem to greatly improve efficiency. And when the third temporary base is built, the first temporary base will almost be demolished. Although Chen Ming now has Baichuan's help in some basic materials, the funding gap is obviously much smaller. And with the start of the test of the hyperspace jump engine, the advancement of the energy crystal technology test, and the second batch of patent fees for antimatter technology, Chen Ming will not be short of money, at least in the short term. But there is no need to support 3 temporary bases for no reason. The main reason is that it is meaningless. The surrounding 400 light-years have been explored. It is too costly to go further, and it is too close to the border of the Empire. It is indeed time to demolish it. However, there is a problem if the first temporary base is to be demolished. The problem of the Zerg. Because in the next 6 months or a year, the Empire and the mechanical race will start a war. The planet where Chen Ming first found the mechanical race city and the Queen of the Zerg is not too far from the territory of the mechanical race. If the war really starts, there is a great risk of being discovered. So with the demolition of the first temporary base, it is time for the Zerg to run to other places. But the problem is that 1/3 of the entire habitable planet has been completely covered by the Zerg nest, and even the climate on the planet has changed due to the coverage of the Zerg nest. Such a huge Zerg nest is a huge project to relocate. And the act of relocation will definitely cause unpredictable damage to the ecology of this habitable planet. It will leave a mess that is difficult to deal with on this planet. Although the mess can be abandoned, Chen Ming has to find a way to move the mechanical city on the mess away intact. This city is the most important place for Chen Ming to produce new mechanical individuals. So it is best for these mechanical races to move to nearby planets with the Zerg. It will be convenient for Chen Ming to stay near the Empire in the future as a bridgehead for the transportation of materials, so that he does not have to use psychic energy to send energy crystals back to the Empire all the time. As for the Zerg, they have to run away. If possible, it would definitely be best to go to the final location of Chen Ming's colony in the future, but it is still a bit far from this goal now, so he still has to follow Hui Huang and the others to move slowly. In the cosmic environment, large-scale, long-distance movement, either use stargates or fly slowly in spaceships, there is no other choice. Chen Ming has no mastery of stargate technology and has not even come into contact with it, so he can only choose the latter. In the latter, the Queen of Zerg can only control the Zerg to create a large number of biological spaceships. In this regard, the gap between destroyers and cruisers will be magnified countless times. So Chen Ming is still waiting now. Wait until the Queen eats the defenders fed to her and evolves into cruisers. It can be considered as progress. It is just right to change the basic structure of the hive in the process of slowly advancing, and adapt to the situation where those biological buildings, made by the Queen that barely have an effect, participate in the hatching process of the Zerg units. Just when Chen Ming closed his eyes and thought about what he had to do recently on the main body. On the prosthesis side, he suddenly heard the voice of Major General Song. I wonder what Instructor Chan is doing recently? I haven't seen you since the last meeting. Chen Ming opened his eyes again. Major General Song's attitude made him feel that Major General Song seemed to have some ideas. He turned his head and looked at Bai Quan, and saw Bai Quan nodded slightly and seemed to have the same idea about Major General Song. Although Chen Ming didn't quite understand why Bai Quan had any ideas about a major general who was half buried in the ground, Bai Quan had his own ideas. Chen Ming and Major General Song had only met once before, and there was no fundamental conflict, so it didn't matter. So Chen Ming responded normally. Spend some time doing research or something. You saw it. The things in the chip. The wrinkles on Major General Song's old face relaxed a little, and after confirming Bai Quan's attitude, he didn't say anything more. Soon he confirmed the authenticity of the data and put the data chip into a special box, and handed it to the military personnel of the Star Zone, who handed the data chip to the laboratory personnel to confirm the value. Major General Song stood up from the conference table, took the initiative to extend his hand to Bai Quan and said, "Thank you for your hard work, and the next thing is the colony." Bai Quan first pulled Chen Ming, who closed his eyes and looked like he had fallen asleep, and then also extended his hand to shake hands with Major General Song, talked about the colony, and ended this meeting. The rest of the things will be discussed when we get to the colony. On the way back to the Stardust level, Bai Quan suddenly sent a file to Chen Ming. Chen Ming opened the file and found that it was a sample of 2 colonies that Lu Wei was going to use for testing. The 2 colonies are located in the same galaxy, one of which is a light industrial colony on a habitable planet, and the other is a heavy industrial colony on an uninhabitable planet. Chen Ming was quite surprised to see the industrial colony on this habitable planet. After all, the habitable planet itself has its value. But when he continued to look at the aerial photos and satellite images of the colony, he suddenly felt no surprise. Because these 2 colonies look extremely decayed even from the outside. Even though there are all kinds of huge industrial production facilities arranged in the colony, it just looks like a backward and desolate town. And according to the information sent by Bai Quan, the development momentum of these 2 colonies has begun to decline as early as more than 10 years ago. Nowadays, most of the industrial facilities are in a state of shutdown and abandonment. If the Legion had not occasionally provided some funds to maintain them, I am afraid that the industrial facilities of the entire colony would have been dismantled and sold for scrap metal. Obviously, Lu Wei and his team had deliberately found 2 abandoned and backward colonies for Chen Ming, and they were connected together. I don't know how much effort they put into it. How shabby. When Bai Quan heard Chen Ming's words, he probably knew where Chen Ming had seen the document. So he introduced the past of this colony to Chen Ming. This colony was originally a colony under the military of the Star region to which it belongs. In a transaction, it was traded to our 14th Legion, and we internally divided it to Lu Wei's faction. Why don't they manage their factions things? After all, they are 2 industrial colonies so close. Don't worry, you will know when you read on. Chen Ming continued to read on the terminal. However, the latter part of the report only roughly talked about the decline of these 2 colonies from more than 10 years ago because of an accident in the industrial colony of the habitable planet. But the specific circumstances of this accident were vague, unlike the quality of the report Bai Quan usually gave. Guessing that this report was probably sent by Lu Wei, Bai Quan forwarded it to him. Chen Ming was too lazy to check it himself, so he asked Bai Quan, who had probably seen and done a background check on the colony, "So what exactly was the accident? Why did an accident cause the entire colony to fail, and even affected the colonies next to it? Think about what the colony has, and then think about what is important in the colony that can cause problems for the entire colony, and you will know." It happened that they were on their way back to Stardust and had nothing to do, so Bai Quan kept it a secret. What is there in the industrial colony? Chen Ming subconsciously recalled the industrial colonies he had visited in the simulation before. Those warehouses, those factories, those assembly lines, those robots, those workers who signed high compensation agreements, and the engineers responsible for maintaining industrial facilities. And the Earth Core Furnace Power Tower that almost every industrial colony has. Earth Core Furnace Power Tower? Bai Quan was not surprised that Chen Ming guessed it so quickly and confirmed, yes, it is the Earth Core Furnace Power Tower. But even if this thing is broken, can it be fixed? Why would the colony next to it also have problems? Because the Earth Core Furnace Power Tower is not just broken. Bai Quan said, and sent another document to Chen Ming. The content of this document is much clearer. It is the true history of the 2 colonies that Bai Quan asked people to investigate. And Chen Ming finally identified the real culprit of the colony's decline, Zhuojing. At that time, Zhuojing once carried out a sabotage plan against the Earth Core Furnace Power Tower, and they succeeded. The power tower not only stopped operating, but also had several explosions before and after, which caused problems in the factories outside and killed many people. It took Lu Wei and the others more than a year to barely repair the energy supply tower, but during this period of time when production was no longer possible, all the customers had already left. And because it was Zhuojing who successfully destroyed the energy supply tower, many left Jing elements were inspired. They took root in this colony and were difficult to eradicate. Even if you kill a group of people, in 2 days another group of people will start to believe in that evil. No one dared to invest or sign a production contract in a place where Zhuojia had done things before. Only some small companies looking for cheap were willing to produce things here. The colony began to decline from that time. The automated system was abandoned first. One was to save costs, and the other was to recruit idle personnel in the colony. The automated system occupies too many people's labor positions. Originally, when the colony was fully operational in the early stage, everyone had something to do. But later, the production lines slowly stopped, and there were fewer places where people were needed, so we had to use this method to get people back. Otherwise, if we leave a large number of people outside with nothing to do, it will create too many opportunities for the spread of zhuojiao, which is also a way to stabilize the social environment. But the effect was not ideal. More left-wing incidents occurred one after another, and there was no way to completely solve the left-wing incident. So Lu Wei and others later gave up and even started assigning some reform through labor prisoners here. The whole environment is a mess, and it continues to this day. Chen Ming listened to Bai Quan's story and read the entire contents of the two documents, and his understanding of Zhuojing became much clearer again. Just 4 words: death is not a pity. He raised his head and looked at Bai Quan. Actually, one thing I'm surprised about is that since these two colonies are like this, they actually still have operating industrial facilities. What are they producing? They are mainly self-sufficient daily necessities. As for the reason why it is still operating, although Zhuojing is a madman, he is not a fool. They definitely have smart people at the top. If they completely destroyed all the working industrial facilities in the entire colony, then the place would be completely shut down and everyone would have to move. Instead, they will lose a place that is already a stronghold. But if they remain like this half-dead state, Zhuojing can even let the empire support them. And as I just said, Lu Wei and the others have reached cooperation with some prisons and used this place as a workplace for reform through labor prisoners and half a prison. It's better to lock a large number of left paths on this planet, and all entrances and exits must be audited. Even if there may be loopholes in the audit, it is better than letting the left paths run around. And not everyone in this colony believes in Zhuojing. We can't kill everyone with one stick. Chen Ming nodded, and he had a thorough understanding of the history of the decline of the light industrial colony. The history of the other heavy industrial colony is similar to that of the light industrial colony. After the leftist elements gradually took root in the light industrial colony, a large number of leftist elements also began to appear inexplicably in the nearest heavy industrial colony. As soon as Zhuojiao appeared, the situation behind it was almost the same. Various accidents in industrial production began to occur frequently here, and orders and vitality were gradually lost. Chen Ming can now see that there is no hope for these two colonies before the left path here is completely wiped out. In other words, they are two pools of stagnant water. Lu Wei and the others are really embarrassed to take them out. Bai Quan said with some helplessness, "No matter how bad the colony is, it is still a colony, and these two colonies should be the ones closest to you that are similar in size to the colonies in the simulation. At least there is really no problem with the location of the colonies. And with their current state, you don't have to pursue them if you want. Okay, actually it's not a big problem. Under such harsh conditions, I can feel more at ease and just do something big." Big deal? Bai Quan suddenly thought of something and said to Chen Ming, "Wait a minute, I have to explain something to you. That is, the colonies within the empire cannot be done casually." Chen Ming suddenly had a bad premonition and asked, "What do you mean?" Bai Quan explained to Chen Ming why he just said that colonies cannot be established casually. Because normally, a large industrial colony, as long as it is not an uninhabitable planet and is not an extremely dangerous type of heavy industry, will have at least hundreds of thousands of people working in the colony. Even if the two colonies have declined to this day, there are always hundreds of thousands of people. You just saw the content of the report. Many automated facilities have stopped, and all the work inside is done by people. The two colonies are expected to have a total of about 200,000 people. You can expand it, but you can't drive all these 200,000 people out to starve. If you take over the colony, you must provide jobs for the people in the colony. Those people may not want your job, but you must be prepared. Even if half of them are Zhuojing, the remaining half must not be abandoned casually. Chen Ming frowned and listened to Bai Quan's explanation and couldn't help saying, "Isn't this a bit too much?" It's indeed too much, but it's an industrial colony after all. If those people here could be kicked out directly, someone would have come to manage it long ago, and it wouldn't be your turn, right? It's because the cost is too high and the troubles are deep-rooted that no one has come to manage this place. Even our 14th Legion doesn't want to look at this place. Chen Ming looked at the photo of the colony on the terminal and suddenly said with some annoyance, "This is a bit disgusting. Does it mean that I might even lose money if I take over the colony? Lu Wei and we have conflicts, so he can't give you a good colony. It would be strange if he could make you happy. But it's not a pure loss. These two colonies are certified colonies anyway, and they can become colonies under your name in the future. After solving the livelihood problems of these people, you can do whatever you want in the future. And the local government will also subsidize such colonies. People's livelihood issues are government issues. If a colony of 200,000 people collapses, the local government will definitely have a headache 100 times more than you. If you take over the colony from Lu Wei, people from government departments will soon come to you to discuss these things with you. They may not want to help you make the colony better. After all, Zhujiang has been deeply rooted for so many years, but they will definitely work with you to maintain the colony. Although no one expects to renovate the mess, as long as this trash can is placed in the original place and can still hold trash, everything will be fine. You have to find a way to deal with these problems. As long as it can be handled well, all the income brought by the two industrial colonies will belong to you after paying taxes. Isn't this faster than other ways to make money? I remember you always said that you were short of money. This is the truth, but Chen Ming still feels something is wrong. Managing people is much more troublesome than managing Yu Hui. It depends on you. Bai Quan patted Chen Ming's shoulder, looking like he believed in Chen Ming very much. The conditions are indeed very troublesome, but Chen Ming can indeed overcome them. And this kind of bad conditions seems to provide him with some convenience in doing things. It is better to say that if he is really given a colony with a good operation status, he will have to consider how to improve the colony with millions of people. Chen Ming reluctantly found a reasonable reason to comfort himself, and then said to Bai Quan, "I have a few questions." You say, "Can Yu Hui be used? I need Yu Hui to build a patrol team and be responsible for security. In the future, some industrial facilities in the colony will also need Yu Hui to control them." No problem. Bai Quan immediately said, "You can apply. I will report everything to you. It will definitely pass. Just remember not to advertise that it is Yu Hui who is managing it. Although Yu Hui's core has been used in many places for so many years, we are still fighting with Yu Hui, and some things are not convenient to say." Okay. Chen Ming nodded in agreement and said again, "Another question, can Zhujiang's people be killed? As long as you have solid evidence in hand, it's okay to kill first and report later. If there are some without clear evidence, as long as it's not too much, I can help you solve it." Bai Quan even gave Chen Ming a quota for manslaughter. It seems that Zhujiang is indeed difficult to deal with. The last question is, I will use psychic power on a large scale, which will definitely be exposed to everyone in the colony. Will there be any problems? That's fine. Bai Quan assured Chen Ming, just use it. The two colonies have been under communication signal control for a long time. The government has been monitoring the communication of the two colonies, and any signal will be reviewed. Although there are still people who can bypass the restrictions and contact them, these rumors are not believed by many people. At most, they will become some urban legends. The Empire has no plans to completely expose the existence of psychics to the public. Chen Ming now finally understood where the rumors about psychics that he heard from his colleagues when he was still working at Cinda Company came from. There must be psychics who use psychic power on a large scale, and then most people were silenced, and finally only some specious news came out. Okay, I'm fine, the rest will come later. Chen Ming and Bai Quan soon returned to the Stardust class. It takes 3 days to get from the 14th Legion branch to this place, and it also takes nearly 3 days to get from here to the colony that Lu Wei and others have determined for Chen Ming to test. So Chen Ming chose to jump directly at this time. He wanted to reach the colony faster and conduct some investigations in advance to determine the expansion plan later. The jump was over soon, and Chen Ming arrived at his destination smoothly. In addition, with the advance notification of the local army, there was no problem with the sudden appearance of the Stardust class, and there was no obstruction. After arriving at the galaxy, he saw 2 planets with colonies. Chen Ming chose to go to the habitable planet with a light industrial colony between the 2 planets. When the Stardust class entered the atmosphere, the appearance of the colony appeared in front of him. And the feeling that Chen Ming felt at first glance was decadence and decline. Because this colony is the most eye-catching, the most easily seen geocentric furnace power tower at first glance is very weak. Especially now that it was daybreak, the dilapidated buildings and abandoned facilities everywhere made the entire industrial colony look lifeless. It was completely different from the advanced scientific research colony he had just left, and the contrast was sharp. It was hard to imagine that these 2 scenes would appear in 2 star fields that were not too far apart. Of course, although the 2 were not far apart, Chen Ming was actually barely in a prosperous star field before. And now, he was in a marginal star field very close to the Empire and the mechanical star field where the Empire was about to start a war. This was the difference between 2 star fields at different stages of development. However, Chen Ming had already learned about the situation of the colony through Baichuan's documents in advance, so he was not too surprised by the scene he saw now. He started to lower the height of the spacecraft directly, intending to get closer to take a look. As the altitude decreased, more details appeared in Chen Ming's eyes. In the outer area of this light industrial colony on the habitable planet, there are many residential areas for people who work here. Although many people who worked here have left in recent years, making large residential areas look empty, Chen Ming can feel it just by looking at those areas where there are still traces of human life. The living conditions here are at least 30 years behind the times before he traveled through time. They can barely survive, but they can't live a decent life. Even in this era, when people really fall to the bottom, there will be many phenomena of regression. And just as Chen Ming passed by the sky above their heads, Chen Ming noticed that many people were paying attention to his spaceship. And among these people, many of them looked at the spaceship with bad expressions, as if they had an inexplicable hatred for the spaceship. It is not known whether it was because of the hardship of life or because they were Zhujiang. Before there was evidence, he was more inclined to regard them as the former. Chen Ming didn't look at these people more. In the past, he didn't look at these miserable people because he was powerless to change them, and looking at them more would only make him feel troubled. But now he doesn't look at these people because he has the ability to change this situation, and he will spend all his time on these things next. The Stardust class went directly to the sky above the industrial colony and began to record and analyze the situation of the entire colony. It can only be said that 90% of the equipment in the entire colony's industrial facilities has been paralyzed. And almost all of these paralyzed equipment is paralyzed due to failure or damage, and there are very few equipment that are paralyzed due to disrepair. This situation is slightly different from the situation investigated, and the reality is worse than the intelligence with a certain lack. And some important livelihood equipment such as water purification plants and power exchange stations have signs of being damaged. It's just that these places have been repaired, and the government has sent some people to protect them nearby. Otherwise, if there is a problem in these 2 places, Chen Ming feels that the entire colony will collapse. This is definitely not the instruction of the upper level of Zhujiang, but the spontaneous behavior of the lower level, Zhujiang, who has really gone crazy to the extreme. They firmly believe that technology brings disasters, so they will destroy these things without any bottom line and bring difficulties to themselves. Chen Ming watched the entire colony gradually fall behind, and there was some complicated meaning in his heart. He said to Bai Quan, who was also observing the colony, "I don't quite understand why the Empire has the money to support these people, and why so many people are willing to stay in such a place. I just looked at it. Those prisoners brought by Lu Wei's faction basically work in a few fixed places. The others are people who were originally here. The Empire only has money now, but it will soon have a fiscal deficit, otherwise the Empire would not have to rush to open up a second battlefield." Bai Quan corrected Chen Ming's concept and said, "As for those people, it is precisely because they were originally here that many people do not want to leave here, but can only rely on receiving the minimum living allowance from the Star District government to survive. At least they will not starve to death." Bai Quan's words made Chen Ming a little difficult to understand. It's really hard to imagine that in this era, there are still people who can't even afford to eat. So Jing has a problem with his brain. All this is caused by them. If you want to take over this colony, you have to rebuild it. But the premise of all this is to complete the next test. I know. Chen Ming agreed and looked at the colony from a distance on the spaceship. He didn't get too close, because if he got too close, it might affect the subsequent verification. Although Lu Wei and his team were already doomed in the future, it was hard to say whether they would come to disgust him again in the end. Chen Ming just calculated silently in his heart, calculating the layout of the colony. This time, there was no Hong Guanghong to help him plan, and he had to handle everything himself. Relying on his experience and the techniques he learned secretly in the simulation, Chen Ming believed that he could do it. But he needed to think about it carefully. 2 days later, Chen Ming came to the light industrial colony of the habitable planet again. This time, Chen Ming not only looked at the ground from a distance in the sky, but he directly controlled the spacecraft to land outside the colony. A special cargo area at the bottom of the space elevator, which had also been out of service for a long time. There is a place for large ships to dock here. Higu, who had said he would come before, also showed up here on time. He took the initiative to greet Chen Ming with a little enthusiasm, and then followed Chen Ming and Lu Wei and others to board a medium-sized shuttle and fly into the air of the colony. This can be regarded as an inspection process. Chen Ming can still raise any opinions now. However, Chen Ming had arrived before and observed the entire colony, so he had no opinions now. Just looking at the desolate environment outside, the badness of Jing still emerged in his mind. And Lu Wei and others were disgusted by him and such things. Chen Ming turned his head and glanced at the people opposite. However, each of them was as lifeless as a dead person, and it was unknown whether they could not find a buyer or what. Only Major General Song showed a slightly apologetic expression to Chen Ming because of Bai Quan's attitude, as if he wanted to say that the location of this colony was decided before, and he could not change it. But this expression disappeared in an instant, so fast that Chen Ming didn't know if he was dazzled. Chen Ming shook his head and continued to look out the window. It took a while for the shuttle to fly around the colony from the air. This colony is also a medium-sized colony like in the simulation, and it will only be larger after expansion. However, arriving 3 days early gave Chen Ming full confidence to control and expand the entire colony. The shuttle quickly circled back to the starting point. Before landing again, Major General Song suddenly said to Chen Ming, "Instructor Chen, where are you going to start?" Chen Ming pointed to the bottom edge of the Earth core furnace power tower in the center of the colony in the distance. That is the warehouse area of the entire colony. Go to the warehouse. I can do the following things with the materials in the warehouse. Okay. Major General Song immediately said a few words to the driver in the shuttle cab who could be completely optimized. The driver quickly drove the shuttle and landed smoothly on the open space near the warehouse. Several warehouses have some traces of renovation, and there are some fresh wool tracks around. It seems that they were specially reinforced when transporting materials to the warehouse, so that the warehouse would not collapse when Chen Ming arrived. There were no figures nearby, as they were all sent away in advance. Let's start from now. Chen Ming said to the others on the shuttle, jumped off the shuttle alone, walked a few steps to the warehouse, and put his hand on the warehouse. The warehouse itself has a mechanized structure. Although this mechanized structure is now rusty and unusable, it does not prevent Chen Ming from controlling it. However, when Chen Ming controlled all the warehouses arranged by Lu Wei and others, Chen Ming's face suddenly changed, but he immediately controlled it, returned to the shuttle, and asked Major General Song, "Are there only these warehouses in total?" "Yes, that's all." "Okay." Chen Ming nodded and hinted to Bai Quan next to him. Then he left the shuttle again, and a nano suit condensed on his body instantly, helping him to move quickly between the buildings in the colony and control the entire colony. Originally, Chen Ming wanted to drive a small car, which would be easier, but he had seen that some narrow places in the colony were not convenient to enter. So in the end, he decided to do it himself, and by the way, he could take the opportunity to observe more about the situation in the colony. When Higu next to him saw this scene, his eyes instantly showed strong interest. He immediately moved his seat, sat next to Bai Quan, and started chatting with Bai Quan. When Chen Ming came back after going around the entire colony, about an hour had passed. Chen Ming stood by the open door of the shuttle, not in a hurry to jump on. Before the official start, I have something to say. The number of materials in the warehouse is wrong. It is about a quarter less than what was agreed before. Is there someone who can't count? What? Major General Song stood up quickly and jumped off the shuttle in a hurry. No need to count. When will I count the supplies for you? I have evidence here. Chen Ming spread his hands, and a data chip gradually condensed in his palm. Thanks to you guys, you repaired the surveillance here when you were stuffing supplies inside. This chip contains surveillance videos from the past few days. I have taken out all the video files. Let's take a look. Major General Song looked at Chen Ming's face without any hint of lying. He picked up the chip with his withered arms, inserted it into the terminal, and quickly played the videos since the surveillance was installed. Just when the monitored content was played on the second day, after the transportation of materials was completed. The door to the warehouse, which was not supposed to be opened until Chen Ming opened. Dozens of people poured into the warehouse. They openly drove a dozen heavy trucks and some auxiliary transportation equipment. They spent more than 10 hours in the warehouse and transported a large amount of goods outside the industrial zone, of supplies that should have been used in the colonies. Even every warehouse has been visited by these people. When there were guards in the warehouse before, the guards here also tried to negotiate when this group of people came in, but the leader of the group showed something to the guards, so the guards continued to let them do their work. And although there is surveillance near the warehouse, nothing can be recorded in the entire industrial area as long as it is a little far away from the warehouse. There is no way to determine the final destination of these trucks. Chen Ming also suddenly said at this time, I really feel that Bai Quan's previous approach should be implemented in our headquarters. Frightened, Bai Quan quickly patted Chen Ming's shoulder to signal him not to talk nonsense. At this time, he did not continue to add insult to injury to Lu Wei and others. Instead, he frowned and couldn't understand what was going on. But visible to the naked eye, the foreheads of Lu Wei, the others, and even Major General Song were all covered with sweat. The surveillance might be fake. Shut up. Major General Song gave Lu Wei a hard elbow to stop him from talking nonsense. Instructor Chun, let us investigate a little bit. It's up to you. Major General Song hurriedly started calling people. Bai Quan also quickly pulled Chen Ming away from the crowd and asked, Are we really short of supplies? It's so little. After Bai Quan and Chen Ming thoroughly confirmed the news, they were stunned for several seconds. Finally, he shook his head and said, They are finished.
What?
Amid Chen Ming's confusion, Bai Quan explained, When the supervisory department came down a few days ago, the matter was already concluded. Don't forget what the final punishment will be. Whether a general is basically demoted by half a rank and sentenced to probation, he suddenly commits a crime while on probation, or commits a crime within a few days of probation, you have to think about the consequences. This matter was never found out before. If it's just industrial equipment that's damaged, that's no problem. It was meant to be repaired for you. But now, there is a problem with an important material warehouse involved in the gambling agreement, which interferes with the progress of the gambling agreement. They have not done their part to shoulder the responsibilities. If something like this happens at this time, if they don't finish it, who will finish it? Did you just want to see them become worse yesterday? You will see what you want to see soon. Your mouth is really... A few hours later, the area near the material warehouse was already crowded with people. Relying on a lot of equipment borrowed from the relatively strict prison next door specifically for labor reform prisoners, Major General Song and the others also confirmed that there was indeed a gap in supplies, and that the video in Chen Ming's chip was indeed real. The moment he got the news, Major General Song, who looked half dead before, suddenly fell to the ground with a gray face. People around him rushed to rescue him, and Lu Wei, who was completely unnoticed by a group of people, had a blank mind at this moment. He did not expect that so many supplies would be taken away in advance. But there was a bitter and cheerful smile on the corner of his mouth. The reason is also very simple. He was the one who took the initiative to provoke trouble with Chen Ming and was rejected by Chen Ming. Bai Quan naturally wouldn't want him, and he was now a colonel, not the previous major general. A colonel in his 50s obviously has no future. They are all people with a dark future, and when they see that others may be about to meet a more miserable ending. Instead, he felt a little relieved. This is really… Chen Ming was standing on the top of a suspended industrial building at this time, looking at the situation at the warehouse from a distance. He said to Bai Quan, who was dealing with this matter near the warehouse and talking to him on the phone, "It's still happening at this time. I originally thought they would do something small at most, but this directly affects the supplies. I didn't expect that a quarter of it was removed." "I didn't expect that either." Bai Quan also had some confusion in his tone. "That's it now. Logically speaking, it's enough to leave the game safely. I really don't understand what they are thinking. Maybe he doesn't want to live anymore." Chen Ming said casually, and then asked Bai Quan, "So what about that Major General song?" Bai Quan automatically ignored Chen Ming's casual remark and responded to the second half of Chen Ming's sentence. "He is okay. He just couldn't handle it because of the sudden situation. He has been revived. The most he has in this matter is joint liability. As long as I can protect him, he will still be a major general, and he will be more dependent on me." "That's it. Then I'm quite curious as to what you want this 60 or 70-year-old man to do. Because he has experience, although I have figured out some things, many things cannot be solved by just thinking about it. If you are inexperienced, you may encounter some pitfalls and step into them. I need someone to help me in these aspects." "Oh." Chen Ming responded again, no longer asking about Major General Song, but asked about the situation that had just happened. "I'm actually curious now about how these people stole the materials from such a warehouse. Even at this time, they can't even keep an eye on such a big thing, right?" Bai Quan has also become accustomed to Chen Ming's thoughts flying around and replied, "Don't even think about it. This was definitely done under the instruction of someone within them, and the person who gave the instruction has not low authority." Chen Ming also agreed with Bai Quan's point of view and said, "I am very curious about who could have done this, and I am also curious about whether these people may be related to Zhu Jing. I don't know if he has any contact with Zhu Jing, but I know that the lieutenant general of their faction has an illegitimate son. Although he got a son from old age, the illegitimate son is unlikely to be exposed to public view, so the relationship between him and the illegitimate son is not very good." Chen Ming asked in surprise, "Do you still know about this kind of thing?" "Since we are opponents, of course I have to investigate." Chen Ming asked again. "Then he is the illegitimate son of a lieutenant general, and he actually comes to such a place where birds don't shit?" "I don't know why he came, but he did come. I just went to investigate. His identity is indeed found in the entry and exit management registration of this colony. Don't forget the situation in these two colonies. The management of entering and exiting the colonies is relatively strict, so he has indeed been here. And according to the testimony of the previous security guards, he did give the group of people who came to the warehouse permission to take away a large amount of supplies. What are you planning? Maybe it's those materials? At least they are materials used to repair and expand a medium to large colony. They are of great value. However, this reason still feels a bit wrong. I need to check it again. Then what to do with these missing materials? Such a large batch of supplies cannot be transported in just a few days. It must be hidden somewhere in the colony, either in those abandoned industrial buildings or in those abandoned residential areas outside the industrial areas. Listening to Bai Quan's guess, Chen Ming's eyes subconsciously scanned the surrounding industrial buildings. He shook his head and said to Bai Quan, "The industrial area can be ruled out. When I discovered that the quantity of supplies was wrong, I had already controlled the entire industrial area. None of the buildings contained these supplies. They must have been hidden outside. Place. Outside? If it is confirmed that it is outside. If we concentrate our efforts to look for it, we will have results within about 3 days. It's a little inefficient." "It is indeed low," Bai Quan admitted. "The main reason is that there are relatively few manpower available, and no one is willing to invest too much in a place like this. Lu Wei and his faction are only willing to contribute due to the situation. Otherwise, the two of us might be handling the matter here." Chen Ming smacked his lips and said unhappily, Forget it, I might as well come in person. At this time, Bai Quan also noticed Chen Ming on the top of the building in the distance. He looked at Chen Ming's position and asked, "How do you plan to come here? Control all the residential areas outside?" My ability is not exaggerated enough to control any house, unless there is a mechanical structure like a warehouse for transporting goods. I just plan to build some robots to assist with the work. By the way, I will let the afterglow core in my hand control these robots. The efficiency should be quite high. I'll go and apply for communication permission for you. Need not. Chen Ming didn't bother Bai Quan. I can be the communication base station myself. Just tell the others and tell them not to be nervous next time. Okay. Bai Quan agreed. And Chen Ming soon saw Bai Quan suddenly attracting everyone's attention from a distance. After the crowd dispersed again, Chen Ming confidently used his own materials to build robots near the warehouse. And relying on his own spiritual power, brilliance quickly took over most of the robots. Under the surprised eyes of those who were dealing with the theft of materials from the warehouse, the robots dispersed in all directions to search the abandoned residential areas. 10 minutes later, Hui Huang suddenly informed Chen Ming, robot number 972 encountered an emergency. Chen Ming immediately put the vision of the robot mentioned by Hui in front of his eyes and saw the situation near the robot. In front of a huge building, a dozen people were holding sticks and watching vigilantly at the robot controlled by Chen Ming that appeared near the building. Is it right here? Hui Huang said, on the ruts leaving the warehouse, there are traces of dirt on the ground after the road was damaged. The traces passed here, and the traces of the ruts faded after that. The weight of the car has become lighter, so it's most likely that it has been unloaded here, right? I understand. Don't rush into conflict yet. Wait until I get there. Understood. Chen Ming immediately said to Bai Quan on the terminal, I found the approximate place. I will send you the location and I will go there first. Good. After Bai Quan responded, Chen Ming put away the terminal and constructed the locust power armor on his body. Chen Ming took a step directly on the top of the building toward the sky, and then the jetpack took him flying into the sky. It flew in the sky for about 2 minutes. Chen Ming locked the target of the brilliant report. It was an abandoned place that was supposed to be a shopping mall. Chen Ming adjusted his posture slightly, turned off his jetpack, and landed directly in front of the gate of the abandoned shopping mall. A large amount of dust was splashed amidst the roar of the machine landing. The gangsters present, who were dressed in a fashionable manner, were instantly frightened by the power armor falling from the sky. Several people had already begun to turn their bodies quietly, as if they were ready to escape at any time. After Chen Ming landed and stood up, he did not directly draw his gun and conflict with these people. Instead, he directly controlled the metal liquid to penetrate into the mall behind these gangsters from the ground, invisible to others. After all, Chen Ming is still not sure whether these people are the ones who stole the goods before. If they are just passing by, or simply don't know about it at all, then accidental injury will not be good. So now, Chen Ming even asked these gangsters in a friendly manner, "Is this your place?" A gangster bravely said, "Yes, what's wrong with you?" Chen Ming glanced at the faces of these people and said slowly, 6 days ago, someone broke into the warehouse in the industrial zone. The expressions of several of these gangsters changed. Chen Ming saw it, but didn't say anything. He continued, they took all the supplies out with more than a dozen heavy trucks. The expressions of more people changed accordingly. Obviously, not everyone present was involved in the previous incident, but most people definitely saw the heavy trucks unloading here. There are not many places where supplies can be stored. This mall should be one of them. I need to go in and investigate. Although the gangster who just spoke was a little afraid of Chen Ming's power armor, he still held on and said, "This is not good, and we are just the gatekeepers. How about you personally talk to our boss?" Chen Ming did not reply immediately, because at this moment, he had already discovered the lost materials in the warehouse underground of the mall through the metal liquid that had penetrated, and explosives piled up in different locations in the warehouse. When he saw these things, Chen Ming had basically determined what was going on. However, just in case, he still used the metal liquid to penetrate deep into the explosive, took away some of the constituent substances, and delivered it to his hands. After Chen Ming's personal analysis, the ratio of these explosive materials was exactly the same as the materials commonly used in Zhuojiao. Confirmed, there are indeed traces of Zhuojie being involved. Does this also mean that there is something wrong with the lieutenant general's illegitimate son? This question flashed through Chen Ming's mind, but he remained calm and continued to control the metal liquid to spread throughout the mall. At the same time, he pretended to have thought it over and said to the gangster, "No problem, where is your boss?" "It's just under the mall, follow me." The gangster waved to the others around him, asking them to put down the weapons in their hands that could not pose a threat to Chen Ming. He also asked them to disperse in scattered pieces and return to the abandoned shopping mall. Chen Ming first asked Hui Huang to arrange the robots to completely surround the mall, and then followed the gangster who spoke before into the mall. Chen Ming noticed that there were some people following him from a distance, but he didn't pay attention and continued to follow the gangster into the depths of the mall. While walking on the stairs covered with gravel and various wastes, Chen Ming suddenly asked the gangster in front of him, "Are you a gang?" The gangster turned back to Chen Ming and showed a forced smile and said, "That's right. It's just a group of people who are not doing well who come together to help each other, so that they don't have to live too hard alone." The tone of the gangster's words was very sincere. If Chen Ming hadn't seen it in advance, Chen Ming still didn't say anything, just nodded and continued walking in the somewhat stumbling passage in the mall. As Chen Ming gradually went deeper into the mall, he noticed that there were fewer and fewer people following him, and the place he went to was getting darker and darker. But he still didn't make any special moves, and just followed the gangster to a small room underground in the mall. The gangster stopped at the door and said to Chen Ming, "The boss is waiting for you inside. I won't go in. You guys talk slowly." Chen Ming glanced at the gangster and stood still at the door. When the gangster's expression gradually became tense, he opened the door and walked in. The gangster outside immediately closed the door and immediately turned around and fell to the ground. A muffled sound of a violent explosion came from the small room. "Haha, silly." The gangster just got up from the ground and hadn't finished what he was saying. An arm wrapped in nanorobots directly shattered the fragile wall after the explosion, pinched his neck accurately, and cut off the second half of his sentence. While pinching the gangster, Chen Ming smashed the wall and walked out of the small room. There were no injuries on his body except for a little smoke from the explosion. Chen Ming flicked the person into the air, and the metallic liquid seeping out from deeper underground immediately trapped the gangster who just had a wild smile on his face. And such a scene also happened in the entire shopping mall. If it weren't for the fact that the metallic liquid hadn't completely penetrated the entire mall just now, and Chen Ming hadn't completely determined the situation of the entire mall, he wouldn't have had time to play with these gangsters. Otherwise, it would be bad if there is any special arrangement somewhere, and he attacks in advance and someone jumps over the wall in a hurry. Therefore, Chen Ming would rather endure it for a while and delay it for a while, so that the metal liquid can completely penetrate. Things are different now. Chen Ming has determined all the conditions inside the mall. Almost everyone in the entire mall was wrapped in metallic liquid and taken out of the mall. They were handcuffed and leg-cuffed and dumped on the ground outside. Except for one person. After walking out of the small room in the underground corner, Chen Ming looked at the direction, walked back to the previous stairs, and headed all the way to the third floor of the abandoned shopping mall. There is an office here that originally belonged to the mall staff, but has now been transformed into a habitable place. And there is another person in this room, the lieutenant general's illegitimate son. He was also trapped in the seat by the metallic liquid. I could only watch as Chen Ming opened the door and came in, casually turning over the things in his table. Chen Ming quickly found a terminal in a hidden compartment of a drawer and easily cracked the password. The news about Zhuojing naturally appeared in his eyes. The situation is simple. The illegitimate son who had a bad relationship with his biological father was discovered by Zhuojing. After some preaching, the illegitimate son believed in Zhuojing and cooperated with Zhuojing to do this kind of thing. Although the relationship between the illegitimate son and his biological father is not good, the bad relationship does not mean that the biological father does not want to see him. After all, the illegitimate son was also the son of the lieutenant general. After all, he should have been given some nice things that would allow him to live a better life, as well as some permissions that he shouldn't have. As a result, just a few days ago, he followed Zhu Jing's instructions and successfully stole that part of the material. He didn't realize at all that these materials were related to his future. If his biological father is completely ruined, how can his illegitimate son fare better? Chen Ming shook his head, put the terminal on the table, and said to the illegitimate son who was still struggling, "Okay, you can talk to the others about the rest." Chen Ming untied the metal liquid from his body, but he suddenly reached into his pocket and pressed a button on the remote control. But nothing happened. What? Something is broken? Chen Ming sneered. On the way here, he used metallic liquid to concentrate all the explosives and dismantled the detonating device. Even if it wasn't dismantled, Chen Ming noticed the things on him when he controlled the lieutenant general's illegitimate son, and there was no way he would be given a chance to detonate it. However, he did not respond to Chen Ming's words. He just kept pressing the button of the remote control in his pocket desperately. Okay. Chen Ming didn't bother to look at him. He stretched out his hand and strangled his neck, throwing him out of the window and into the crowd of Bai Quan and others who had already come over. Of course, Chen Ming didn't go too far and directly threw the person to death, but still caught the person with metallic liquid. Chen Ming stood at the broken window and gave Bai Quan a thumbs up, indicating that he would leave all the rest to him. Then he returned to the room and continued to check some contents on the terminal. Let's take a more detailed look at how Zhu Jing preached to a young man who should have a pretty good life. However, Chen Ming didn't see what he wanted to see, because this illegitimate child seemed to have the habit of regularly deleting messages. There is no news from a month ago. However, Chen Ming found some clues in a chat record. This chat record seems to reveal the location of a left radius-related stronghold in a nearby galaxy, and it is a real stronghold. All the people above are leftists. It was an ecological observatory in orbit of a habitable planet. At first glance, Chen Ming almost thought it was the place where he had been ambushed by the left path psyker. After carefully checking the coordinates, he confirmed that it was not the place. It's just that this observatory is built on a habitable planet that is also undeveloped. Such an isolated place was eventually infiltrated by Zhu Jing. Chen Ming thought about it and deleted the record directly. Some of his ideas just needed such a place. Then it would be better if this base was not exposed to other people's sight. Chen Ming estimated that this illegitimate child would not be able to remember the complicated coordinates. Even if he remembered, by the time others got the results from the illegitimate child's mouth, what he wanted to do should have been done. 2 hours later, the stolen materials in the material warehouse under the mall have been counted. Chen Ming also mixed with Bai Quan again. After chatting with Major General Song and others, Bai Quan turned around and slapped a document in Chen Ming's hand. Okay, the specific list of lost materials is here. Check if there is anything missing. If there is nothing missing, start as soon as possible. Otherwise, if it is delayed for too long, this matter may be caught by others. Okay, Chen Ming agreed and said, then have the people I asked you to find come? Yes, they are all very respectful to you. They are over there. Bai Quan pointed to an open space outside the mall, where several spaceships belonging to different departments were parked. There are the personnel department and police department of the government, as well as the local Star Zone army. The number of people is a little less than Chen Ming expected, but it is acceptable. I think it is your face. Chen Ming stuffed the face into Bai Quan's face. He reviewed the colony structure that he had thought of before in his mind and prepared to start. But Bai Quan asked again at this time, so why did you ask them to come? You will know soon. Chen Ming's psychic energy was stimulated, but it did not act on the industrial area of the colony at the first time. Instead, it acted on the metal liquid that Chen Ming constructed with various materials. As Chen Ming's spiritual power expanded, a thin layer of metal liquid suddenly appeared under everyone's feet. With the advance warning, no one panicked, but was just curious about what Chen Ming was doing. And Chen Ming was actually controlling these metal liquids to cover the areas outside the colony. This huge amount of metal liquid became Chen Ming's eyes. Let every place be in Chen Ming's field of vision. Let everything in every place be observed by Chen Ming, including those traces left by those who believe in the left path hidden in every corner. Various slogans, various doctrines, and various products of destroyed technology are all traces and evidence. Chen Ming can even use metal liquid to directly invade everyone's terminals. Metal liquid can be constructed into data cables and signal receivers. As long as it is inserted into the terminal, Chen Ming can be forced to connect to any electronic device. Although it does not have a control effect like Yuhui, Chen Ming himself has mastered a lot of hacking techniques, and it is not troublesome to hack into these terminals. Not to mention the assistance of Hui Huang. Although Chen Ming is actually assisting Hui Huang in terms of workload, Chen Ming feels that there is little difference. Chen Ming can directly retrieve data from these terminals to understand the situation of these terminal users and the people around them. This method is actually a bit bad, but Chen Ming doesn't mind using it when facing Zhuijing. It's better than the remaining Zhuijing continuing to revive in the future. After all, the scale of this colony is not small. Chen Ming now needs psychic energy to fully act on the colony, and this huge amount of psychic energy consumption is even more than that spent in the previous simulation. If those termites cannot be completely eliminated, then what Chen Ming is doing now is meaningless. While Hui Huang uses Chen Ming's psychic energy to help him investigate Zhuijing, Chen Ming will also use metal liquid to control all these people according to Hui Huang's investigation results. Take them one by one to the open space next to the mall. Those people who Bai Quan helped to call also have the tasks they should be responsible for. When Chen Ming used the metal liquid to carry a large number of people to the open space near the mall, Lu Wei, Major General Song and others could see that Chen Ming was not doing any operations on the colony itself, but was doing some extra things that had nothing to do with the gambling agreement. So much so that Lu Wei was now looking forward to seeing Chen Ming's lack of mental strength due to doing this thing, and ultimately leading to the failure to complete the agreement. Major General Song hoped that this matter could end peacefully. At least in this way he could get a reply from Bai Quan that would make him feel at ease. And the several leaders of the local government and military departments who were called by Bai Quan also rushed over as soon as they noticed what the metal liquid was doing. They came to Chen Ming and asked Chen Ming, "Mr. Chen Ming, who are these people?" "People who are involved with Zhuijing. I asked Bai Quan to invite you here, hoping that you can help deal with these people." The few leaders who had just arrived looked at each other when they heard this answer. Although Chen Ming was a psychic, he suddenly used psychic power to capture a large number of people from various places in a colony. This situation made people a little incomprehensible. The military leader asked tentatively, "You said they were Zhuijing? Then the evidence." Before he finished speaking, suddenly everyone heard a series of explosions in the distance of the residential area. Also in the residential area. What's going on? The military and police immediately felt something was wrong and wanted to send people to investigate the explosion. But Chen Ming stopped him. "Just now, some Zhuijing detonated the explosives buried in their own place. I didn't have time to clean up all the explosives around them. You can only see the bodies when you go there, and you have to find a way to clean them up. It's better to arrest them here first. As for the evidence you want, I'm already sorting it out." Sorting it out. This sentence made several leaders at a loss for a while. This is not good. Although there was an explosion just now, if there is no evidence for the other people who were captured, there will be some problems in the procedure. How about we get the evidence first and then come? Bai Quan suddenly interrupted at this time. "I can guarantee this matter for Chen Ming. If there are any problems, you can come to me and I will take responsibility for the problems." Although Bai Quan said so, the responsible persons were still a little hesitant. After all, according to Chen Ming's efficiency in catching people and the number of people who have been captured in the open space, what Chen Ming is going to do is definitely not a scale of dozens or hundreds of people. They just came here to go through the motions according to Bai Quan's request, but now they have to take charge of such a big thing suddenly. It is really not something they can decide directly. Chen Ming had no choice but to create another data chip from his palm. These are some of the evidence that is easy to organize. Take a look. The rest of the evidence that is not easy to organize will be given to you later. I can make sure that all the people I catch are related to Zhuijing." The responsible persons looked at each other, and finally the representative of the military, the main force dealing with Zhuijing, took the chip. After inserting the chip into a terminal, they also saw the evidence stored in the chip, which Hui Huang helped to organize. and Chen Ming directly picked out all the people involved in the evidence. As long as they were compared, the evidence and the actual situation would naturally match. Several people chatted with each other for a few words and confirmed that the evidence was fine. At the same time, they immediately realized what Bai Quan meant when he asked them to come over before, saying that they should bring as many people and spacecraft as possible. If every left-wing element captured by Chen Ming can have such clear evidence, then this matter will definitely be good for them. It was the military leader who first asked Chen Ming, "How large an area can your psychic power cover?" "All." Chen Ming gave a completely unexaggerated answer. "You can first estimate how many left-handed paths there are in the entire colony, and then decide how many spaceships to bring here. Anyway, I will bring here all the people in the entire colony who have clear and relevant evidence related to the left-handed paths. It's not easy for me to handle this matter, but you can. Please wait a moment." The attitude of the military leader changed, and he immediately ran back to the spaceships where he had just been before he came to Chen Ming. Seeing this, the other people also said goodbye to Chen Ming temporarily, followed the military representative back to the spaceship, and immediately contacted the superior department. A few minutes later, the leaders returned to Chen Ming again, and this time their attitude changed 180 degrees from before. The head of the Star Zone military said to Chen Ming, "We have been authorized to fully cooperate with your work. What do you need us to do?" "Just arrest people." "Understood." With the instructions of the superiors, Chen Ming's evidence, and Bai Quan's guarantee, it would be unreasonable not to do it. It is impossible for several departments to think about how to divide the credit before the credit is obtained, so they immediately cooperated to start arresting the people brought by Chen Ming. However, no matter how efficient they are, and there are 3 departments to cooperate, they also had no way to deal with Chen Ming's continuous flow of left-path molecules to the open space near the mall. Let alone the manpower problem. The open space alone was soon filled with metal liquid and people controlled by the metal liquid. But in fact, there were more left-path molecules being sent here by Chen Ming's psychic power. So after communicating with the heads of those departments, Chen Ming chose to send people to the vicinity of the Stardust landing site. Because the people in those departments had just notified them to go back and request more spaceships and more manpower to come. It just so happened that this place had a large open area that could be used to dock the remaining spaceships. Time passed by minute. When the metal liquid had swept the entire residential area around the entire colony, all the people in the entire colony who had clear connections with the left path had been arrested. The total number reached more than 60,000, which was equivalent to an average of 1 in 2 or 3 people in the entire colony believed in the left path. The number was exaggerated to the extreme. It really took the government a lot of money every year to support these left path people. Moreover, these are only the people who believe in Zhujiang and have left clear evidence. There may be more Zhujiang members who have not left clear evidence. So we need to interrogate them next and confirm who else is suspected of believing in Zhujiang through the interpersonal network. But these are not Chen Ming's business. After he finished sweeping the residential area, he took a short rest and started to transform the industrial area directly. This is what he really wants to do today. The psychic energy was stimulated again. The metal liquid that covered the residential area around the industrial area rolled back to the industrial area like a tsunami sweeping towards an isolated island. Chen Ming heard some exclamations. I don't know whether it was because of the metal liquid tsunami or about to pass over their heads, or because they were simply shocked by the psychic energy. Anyway, he didn't care. As long as the metal liquid is slightly controlled, no one will be hurt by mistake. And here are either Zhujiang, civilians whose communications are regulated, or people from the government and the army. No matter which reason, nothing will happen. And what happened in the colonial industrial area next was basically the same as what was simulated in the simulation. The metal liquid covered the abandoned industrial facilities and seeped into them, and then the industrial facilities were instantly as good as new. Such scenes are gradually spreading from the outer periphery of the industrial zone to the inner circle. However, there are some differences from the simulation. When the metal liquid spread to the warehouses under the Earth core furnace energy tower in the innermost circle, the metal liquid controlled by Chen Ming continued to spread to the Earth core furnace energy tower. In the simulation, Chen Ming did not repair the Earth core furnace energy tower, because the Earth core furnace energy tower in the simulation operated without any problems. At that time, Chen Ming was not very good at estimating how much mental power would be needed to repair such a behemoth that penetrated deep into the mantle and to the center of the Earth. However, as he subsequently acquired some knowledge of the Earth core furnace energy tower in the simulation, he also had a general understanding of the situation of this tower, and also determined that the amount of remaining mental power he calculated using psychic power in the previous simulation was sufficient to repair the Earth core furnace energy tower. In addition, this Earth core furnace energy tower in reality has indeed been destroyed, leaving irreparable damage, and it cannot be used normally without repair. Even Chen Ming found that some places inside the Earth core furnace energy tower that seemed to be still in operation, just like the industrial facilities outside, were installed with some bombs by the left path elements. I am afraid they are just waiting for a day to come and completely destroy this place. In fact, what Chen Ming did today has already met this condition, which is enough for the left path to detonate the bomb. Especially when some bombs placed by the left path in the residential area exploded just now, the Earth core furnace energy tower should have exploded. But fortunately, in order to avoid trouble and recover more mental power, Chen Ming had controlled all the industrial buildings in the industrial area in advance, and all the bombs were cleared by him at the first time. The residential area is too large, and there is no mechanical structure in the industrial area. Chen Ming can only rely on metal liquid to dismantle it, so he still didn't have time to completely solve all the bombs, and it was still blown out by several left path elements. However, the loss of the residential area is not important. The important thing is that the energy tower is fine. However, it is precisely because of these reasons that he now needs to thoroughly repair this Earth core furnace power tower. Although Chen Ming is still a little worried because he has never operated it before, as the metal liquid gradually penetrates into the tower along the junction of the Earth core furnace power tower on the surface and spreads upward and downward to the entire power tower. Chen Ming's slightly tense heart is completely relaxed. Successfully merge a large amount of metal liquid with the power tower and restore the entire power tower to its original new appearance and can start running at full power again. The roar of the engine operating at the bottom of the Earth core furnace power tower gradually began to sound, and a heat wave began to spread from the power tower to the surroundings. At the beginning, some heat will indeed escape when restarting at the highest power. However, with the normal operation of the power tower, the heat wave dissipated, and the ambient temperature returned to normal again. And the thick smoke that should have appeared around the energy tower was also repaired by Chen Ming, and the original waste gas recovery devices were all packed and collected. This is a device that is generally only available in industrial colonies located on habitable planets and with industrial facilities. It can effectively relieve environmental pressure. If it can operate normally, it means that the entire energy tower has been truly put into operation. The maintenance of the entire colony has been completely completed with the good operation of the energy tower. Chen Ming's mental power still has enough remaining amount. The mental power consumed by maintenance is still a small amount after all, and the majority of mental power consumption is always in the expansion after maintenance. Expansion is much more troublesome than maintenance. Its troubles are mainly in the design. As in the previous simulation, Chen Ming needs a special design to make all the things in the newly expanded colony, whether it is buildings or equipment, all transformed from the original basis. And there cannot be too many independent buildings, otherwise, in such a vast area, his mental power consumption is likely to not keep up. Before, Chen Ming had the assistance of Hong Guanghong. This time, he needs to complete such a design by himself. At the same time, he also needs to make these things he designed meet his interests and put them into production as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the colonies compensate him later, he will have to be responsible for the expenses of maintaining the two colonies. Even with government subsidies, it will be troublesome if the investment cannot be converted into income in time. If the colonies cannot start making money as soon as possible, or at least reduce the amount of money that needs to be spent on the colonies, then the money in his hands, although it has more than 60 billion after the second batch of antimatter technology patent fees, and some of his technologies have begun to be tested and make money. But put it in the mouths of these two already complete and decaying gold-eating beasts, not even a sound may be heard. So he now needs to make his own plans before the expansion, and that's why he came here 3 days earlier and completed his plan. What Chen Ming has to do in this light industrial colony is very simple. Because the light industrial production system here does not need to be changed, the main types of production equipment in this light industrial colony are plastic products and some daily necessities with plastic as the main material. And plastic is an indispensable part of industry, and it is also an indispensable thing for Chen Ming's colony and the way to open up the past halfway. All the materials needed for the development of Hui Huang were either brought from Yuhui before or purchased and supported by his money-making methods. Since Chen Ming is about to have his own industrial colony, he must replace the materials he has been purchasing with cheaper means to obtain them. Starting from lower level and cheaper raw materials for self-production is obviously a good choice, and reducing the cost of some materials is definitely not a problem. That's why Chen Ming will give priority to repairs, because the original industrial facilities are also within his plan. Chen Ming can directly digest the output of this colony internally. By the way, he can also use some plastic products industries to earn some costs back, and by the way, he can also place those who may still stay on the planet in these unimportant industries, which perfectly meets Chen Ming's needs. However, after he completes the task of the light industrial colony, the task of another heavy industrial colony that needs to be done is completely different. Another heavy industrial colony in the same galaxy is located on an uninhabitable planet. Non-habitable planets mean higher maintenance costs, which leads to the decline of heavy industrial colonies. Although it is due to the impact of the left path on the light industrial colonies, the status is worse than that of habitable colonies. The damage to the industrial facilities of the heavy industries above is more serious, and the population is relatively small. Although it will be easier to deal with the left path at that time, Chen Ming even dares to directly move all the population of the heavy industrial colonies to the light industrial colonies at his own expense. Then the heavy industrial colonies will be completely vacated, leaving it to himself and his subordinate Yuhui to complete the operation of the entire colony. With Yuhui's management, Chen Ming believes that many things will be much easier. But there are other problems with the heavy industrial colony. That is, its original basic industrial facilities. Their own purpose is to produce civilian spacecraft hulls. After all, it is not a colony built by the 14th Legion at the beginning, but a colony obtained from this star region. Most of these industrial facilities are used to help other companies produce and make money. Chen Ming does not need things like civilian spacecraft hulls, even if it can be transformed into a production line for manufacturing military spacecraft hulls. He thinks it is unnecessary, because he doesn't need too many spaceships. There is a Stardust-class ship in the Empire, and a small to medium-sized fleet to hunt pirates and earn some pocket money for daily use is enough. Outside the Empire, the number of Yuhui's fleets in his hands is already saturated. Continuing to expand will only increase pressure from all aspects. As for the small number of spaceships missing, instead of producing them, Chen Ming might as well buy some materials and build them himself. What's more, he will have a larger fleet of Zerg biological spaceships in the future. Ordinary spaceships are no longer too important in Chen Ming's eyes. Unless it's the Stardust class or the Heavy Rain class, which are two spaceships he likes very much, then he might be more prepared. However, both of these spacecraft are tachyon technology spacecraft, and Chen Ming does not have much spacecraft manufacturing technology. Although he has been doing the reverse research after in-depth optimization, he has not been very efficient. After all, there are many other things that have been dragging his energy. Therefore, the idea of mass-producing heavy rain and stardust can be passed on directly. Therefore, this heavy industrial colony needed to be revamped. As for the reconstruction, Chen Ming's idea is to cooperate with Bai Quan. Although he can renovate it at will, after all, Chen Ming's side is still on the road of development. There are many heavy industries that can use this colony to make up for some of the things he needs to spend money to acquire. But after comprehensively considering the situation of the two colonies, Chen Ming felt that it was better to use this heavy industry colony to make money. Making money will definitely result in a loss compared to directly replacing the materials needed in the development process. But it is not unacceptable to lose a little in exchange for a liquid fund. And this can draw him into a relationship with Bai Quan. It's not that Chen Ming doesn't understand things about human affairs. If some of the things in his hands were divided, it would be better than keeping them all in his own hands. Chen Ming and Bai Quan currently have a cooperation in energy crystallization, but this cooperation is still in the early experimental research stage and cannot make money yet. So Chen Ming simply brought this heavy industry into cooperation now. Anyway, as long as the heavy industry colony can operate stably and normally, it is impossible not to make money. Then this money is given to everyone. No matter how Chen Ming wants to make money, he must give at least part of it to those raw material suppliers, so why not cooperate with Bai Quan? Bai Quan definitely has resources on hand. Moreover, there are many technologies within the 14th Legion that only belong to the 14th Legion. At the same time, there are also many military things that rely on qualified companies that cooperate with each legion to produce them. Although Chen Ming has no qualifications, he is now nominally a member of the 14th Legion. It is absolutely no problem for Bai Quan to provide raw material support and earn profits from it. Chen Ming also specifically asked Bai Quan before. Although Bai Quan was a little hesitant, he finally made up his mind and agreed to Chen Ming's request, and agreed to let him be involved in the production of some military industries. Chen Ming's psychic power did make people worry a lot and would hinder many things, but Bai Quan did not reject him because of this. Then Chen Ming will naturally try his best to take care of Bai Quan. So the final choice for the transformation of the heavy industrial colony was determined, which was fuel production. Fuel is a consumable, and Chen Ming's psychic energy acting on consumables will have a much better negative impact on others than acting on other hulls, weapons, armor, etc. that need to be used for a long time. Later, when the antimatter fuel technology is completely mature and can be put into commercial use, it will be more convenient to convert it into an industrial facility for manufacturing antimatter fuel. In addition, Chen Ming happens to have a synchrotron core on hand that can be used in industrial facilities. As the first synchrotron core actually put into use, it can also bring some additional value to his technology. By the way, Chen Ming can also have a reasonable excuse to ask Bai Quan for 2 synchrotron cores. Bai Quan also helped Chen Ming negotiate the raw material suppliers for fuel production and the profit sharing between the parties in the previous 3 days. By the way, he also helped Chen Ming contact a petroleum processing company that cooperated with the 14th Army Corps. They could purchase the byproducts of petroleum, which are the raw materials for plastics, at a relatively low price, which can be used in light industrial colonies. All these things were done within 3 days of Chen Ming's early arrival. Now that Chen Ming has arranged everything, he only needs to finish what he should do, and all that is left is to wait. As long as all the prerequisites are arranged, all the remaining afterglow cores will be taken care of for him. Of course, the transformation of heavy industry will come after the light industry colonies. And now the expansion of light industrial colonies has just begun. This takes some time.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.